Be careful. He's
and Scott Higgins, both of them coked up out of their minds.
Listen to you. He's down in the basement.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I think we should call this the Acement.
The Acement, yes.
Yeah, what do you think there, huh?
I like that. The Acement Studios.
Excuse me, I'm drinking beer. Hold on a second.
We usually drink bourbon on our end.
Yeah,
when we
right.
do the podcast, so
That's all right.
feel free to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You shoot an 8-ball if you want. We don't care, as long as it's good stories.
Thanks for joining us, everybody, and welcome to the Acement. Tonight we have a panel of funny.
Look at this.
Where?
This is they're upstairs waiting to come down after this.
Once you guys are done,
hodgepodge
they're coming in. No.
is coming in, but Ace and I not too long ago were having a discussion, and
Probably a few bourbons.
we are known to do that.
Yes.
We are known to do that.
Speaking
and
of, how about passing that Willet over?
you want to have the Willet?
Yeah.
We have, as you can see, we are having a cornucopia.
It's called. We
Of
haven't
bourbon
finished
tonight.
all the shit we bought at the
Yeah, Ace is
holidays.
making us basically clean out the kitchen sink. But we have the Motorhead Ace of Spades bourbon, which is very good. We have
What killed Lemmy?
That's it. Yes.
too soon.
Too soon.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Really?
We have Low Gap, California's made with local grains and finished in cognac still bourbon.
And that is.
If anybody wants to try that, that is a
also
very tasty
Scott's
one.
new nickname is Low Gap. But go ahead.
And then I'm just going to disregard that.
Yeah, I know.
And then the Willet bourbon that Ace is fulfilling his I Dream of Jeannie fantasy with.
Barbara Eden. Yes.
And be careful because I think Ace sat on this last week throughout the entire podcast.
Oh, my.
You know, one episode and you got to keep bringing it up.
Now I'm not rubbing
Anyway.
it 3 times.
Anyway,
That's what he did the whole time.
That's what I did.
1, 2.
All right.
But
Hey,
anyway.
we have a show to do.
Yes, we do. Yes, we
already
do.
we're off the rails.
And
I can tell.
And I'm very excited about tonight's subject because it is something near and dear to me. We are going to talk about one of the things that really got me interested in performing comedy. One thing that we've talked about in the past is the influence of Saturday Night Live on so many people. And there's so many, we could sit here and list so many great character actors that have been on there, so many great sketches, but there was one season in particular that really, really stood out because it was so strong, and this cast was only together for that one season. They brought all these heavy hitters in. They had amazing characters, amazing sketches, and then at the end of the season, they all left. And it was over. And
It's almost like tonight's episode.
Yes, exactly.
We have assembled
the heavy hitters.
almost like
Look at that.
almost
A funny
like
podcast.
the Justice League of writers. At least the Justice League of writers who live in or
Well, I was
around
just
Rhode
gonna
Island.
say, you have 4 experienced writers and me.
and Scott
And me tonight.
No, we so first let's introduce our guests and some of their credentials, and then we'll talk a little bit about that SNL season 10. So first, all 3 have been on, and actually have been on probably in the past 6 months, and it just so happened that we had all these writers who are also do other things. So we have our friend Brendan Kirby from The Road Show.
Thank you. And as everyone should know, and I'll remind everyone, hang on, you've done enough talking already.
Yeah,
right
thank
here.
you, Brendan.
It's Scott's tasting room.
I also wanted to mention not just the Road Show, but also author of the Seinfeld cookbook.
That's right. Yes,
Thank you.
which
I'm
we
only
still
teasing. You
have
know I
over
love
there.
you.
I love you too,
All right,
but I
yeah.
want to give you
guys done?
just credit. That's
You
all.
want to get a room? I got a couple of bedrooms upstairs. What the hell?
I just want to remind everyone
Yes.
that I came up with the name.
You did.
That's
When you
gonna go
hear-
on my tombstone,
That's impressive.
The Acement.
When you
He
hear
crowned it the Acement. That was it.
when you hear the beginning montage and you hear, I think we should call this the Acement. Yes, that was Brendan Kirby.
I'm such a dork, but I'm happy to be here. I love SNL. I don't know a lot about that season, so I did some homework, and I've been watching the episodes
Awesome.
to
Yeah.
be ready for this.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to be here. Thank
Awesome. Thank you for doing the homework.
Of course. Come on, for you, anything,
And
buddy.
again, the reason why we assembled this group is because you've got writing experience.
Yeah.
You were an intern at David Letterman. You write for the Road Show. You write segments.
Right.
So
And I've done so many I've hosted so many roasts and performed on them.
Right.
I love
Exactly.
joke writing.
Exactly.
And then I have such an appreciation for comedy writing. That's what I wanted to be. And I'm kind of doing a variation of that now. So I love it. I really appreciate good, solid writing.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, you're not getting any of that tonight. But next up, our buddy Brian
Speaking of
Mulhern.
Seinfeld,
Yes.
hello, I'm Brian. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents.
Nice. Nicely
My name's Monique.
Victoria's outside.
You just ordered the same thing I had.
So Brian has been a writer for a very long time, going all the way back to 94 HJY when he was known as Brian the Pharmacist on the Carolyn Fox Show.
Wow.
That was his drug dealer days.
That was a long time ago. Since
And again, for people who don't know, because it was
Yeah.
a rock station, everyone assumed that I was, passing oxys out from the trunk of my car.
Yes.
The reality is,
We wish.
I was a pharmacy technician, so I was counting blood pressure medication.
which is
one short, Brian.
Which is exactly what I was doing while I was
Right.
listening to you on the radio, thinking, how come this fucking clown is on the radio? I do the same thing.
And now I
Five
take,
at a time.
I take that very blood pressure medication. It's come full circle.
And just like the people who used to come in, you don't know the name of it. You call it the pink pill. Right?
Were you wearing a white lab coat?
I was
Yeah.
not.
All
No.
right.
No? Oh, I did. I used to wear
Really?
one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hardcore.
Yeah. And then, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get through the other stuff because you've done other things.
I have.
You wrote on a little station. You know what? We won't even say their name
No, they don't deserve it.
because, they're.
It's the hillbilly station.
It's
in
the
town.
hillbilly station in town, exactly. And so you did that, and then on your episode we also talked a little bit about the fact that you and your brother Kevin were writing for Phil Hartman, and were working on his show.
Yeah, his sketch show
his
that he was
sketch
coming
show
out
that he
with.
was trying to come out with right before he passed. So that's why you're here. And then at the end of the table, our buddy Dan Smith, who was a comic, but also was a writer in L.A. for a couple of years, and and was one of the opening acts for Bob Saget. And so we just recently had him on a few months ago, and so thanks for coming in. So remind us though, what was some of the shows that you were writing? I know that some of them were the dating shows.
Blind
right?
Date
Yeah.
was
Blind
one
Date?
of them, if I remember.
Between 97-ish and 2002, I had my grimy little paws on virtually every dating show on television.
And he's still trying to shower all that off.
Yeah.
Yes, it was gross, but somebody had to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it was
a
a gig.
I was definitely pigeonholed as the dating show writer for about a half a decade.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it was my introduction into television writing. So
Right.
from I did a bunch of other script stuff for reality shows, but because we all know there's no such thing as pure reality.
Pure reality.
So,
yeah, right.
Except right here in the basement.
That's right, because we don't prepare shit.
That's full circle
That's
right
full
there.
circle.
It's very
right.
evident,
Yes.
actually. Yes.
Thank you. So thanks guys for being on.
Thanks for having us.
And we've been talking about this because we've talked about this season before, but we never really talked too much about like the history of it. So we know that the first 9 years there were a couple of casts. Obviously, you had the first version of Not Ready for Primetime Players.
Right.
Then they had the second season. That was the season where everyone came in, and I think they only not the second season, but the second cast.
After Lauren left.
It after Lauren left when
yeah.
they fired everyone except for like Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo and right?
They weren't even on the show at that time. Gene
Okay.
Domanian took it over.
Okay.
As the producer, and they brought in a bunch of people who went on to have really horrible careers, with the exception of Gilbert Gottfried,
Right.
Right.
who was
right.
a part of that
but he was not even utilized during that cast. From what I understand, they were so pissed off at him. He talked about it on
Stern, I think.
Stern
Yeah, he hated
about
it.
he was like, I'm gonna break into the impression.
Come
now.
on,
you know what's
gotta
gonna
do
happen.
it. Gotta hear it.
Yeah. I was so despised that they had me playing a corpse at a funeral just so I wouldn't talk. But that's what they said. He didn't meld. And so then they had a couple so then was it
Well, I want to mention too that
Yeah.
there was a Rhode Islander on the show in the cast.
was
Charles
Rocket.
Yeah.
Who got
Who
fired
said,
for dropping the
Fuck
F-bomb.
on the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
Another one of
For
Rhode
the-
Island's
for
claims
the
to fame.
because
Yes.
they did a Dallas skit.
Yes.
Where he said, "I want to know who fucking shot me,"
Yes.
and he was
Yeah.
also in Dumb and Dumber.
Yes.
And Charles met his untimely demise at his own hands in
Yeah.
Canterbury, Connecticut.
Really? Oh,
Yes.
really?
Yes.
I didn't know it was in Canterbury.
Yeah.
Which is not far
He
from
samurai'd himself in
Canterbury
a
is known for that, ironically. I don't
Get
know
out.
why.
here. Really?
Yes. Yeah.
It's on their Wikipedia.
Is that part of the
page.
Canterbury Tales? I seem to
Could
remember
be. I
reading
don't
that
know.
in college.
He
Not much for the fancy book learning.
Yeah.
Well, you live up in Redneckville.
Yeah, right.
And you worked with them peoples for a while.
Yeah.
Them folks.
For sure.
So
I understand Jeffrey Chaucer also wrote on the 84-85 season of SNL. That-
I think you're correct. He was the assistant to the traveling secretary that
yes.
very deep cut.
year. But
Well,
during
and Art
season,
Vandelay was the costumer,
Yes.
wasn't
no,
it?
but he
importing
was,
and
he was doing
exporting.
importing and exporting
Yeah.
that year. But the season 10, that was Dick Ebersol was
Yes.
Right.
So
producer.
basically, there was that horrible season.
Right.
And then there was
Was it
a
Terry
rebirth.
Sweeney on that season too?
No,
No?
I think he was 85.
Oh,
if I'm
okay.
not
the year
mistaken.
after.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm a
okay.
total SNL geek.
No,
so-
no, and that's why we wanted you, because honestly, it's been, 48, 50 seasons? So we're talking about season 10. It was a long time ago.
Right.
There are people that stand out on that show, but I kind of wanted to lead up to that season because, there were ups and downs even before that. 'Cause-
Ebersol had theretofore a sports background.
Yes,
predominantly,
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yes,
NBC Sports. Yeah.
Right. So I know there was. I've read that book live from New York, as most of us probably have, and I know there was a lot of concern about, okay, can this guy really handle this type of comedy show?
Right.
And I know it's tough to gain that kind of respect from someone, especially in the comedy world, who's coming from a sports background.
when you're coming from a
Right.
different background.
Right,
Right.
right.
So,
But I think this all demonstrates the roller coaster nature of the show.
Right.
Because, Lauren leaves, it bottoms out. Eddie Murphy comes along, all of 19.
Right.
And then it just takes off like a rocket ship. And then the year prior to 84, Eddie leaves halfway
Yeah.
during
Through
the
the season.
season.
Right.
And
'Cause
then
he got the
Piscopo
movies.
leaves because he's like, I'm nothing without him.
Yeah.
And so then they knew they had to hit the reset button again.
Yeah.
And
Right.
what do you do to follow Eddie Murphy? Well, what you do is you get some of the most talented fucking people in the world,
Yep.
pay them a mint, and all of them to a person have said, for as much as we enjoyed that season, one of the worst years of my show business career. It was
Right,
really,
really?
really difficult because what they ended up doing was they were doing a lot more pre-tapes, and it just took
Yes.
a lot more
Yeah.
time as opposed to just doing. The
I was
straight
doing the
up
live
stuff.
show.
Because I rewatched the season, and I also went on and I did some research about it. But let's first, I'll give you a list of the repertory players, as they
here we
call
go.
them. You had Jim Belushi, Billy Crystal, Mary Gross, who I find,
love Mary Gross.
when I think back on that season, I always think of the heavy hitters, but she was brilliant.
She
in that
really
season.
was,
She was
yeah.
so funny.
I think she's a lot of people tend to gloss over her.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes.
Very
I agree
underrated.
with
I
talent.
did myself, but looking back at that season, she
very
had some
talented.
real funny moments that year. But then you had Christopher Guest, Rich Hall, who another one that I
Not
forgot
necessarily the news too.
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah,
he came
about.
exactly.
Gary
That's right.
Kroger, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Harry Shearer, who left in January that season. He wasn't there for the entire
wasn't there.
season.
As he said, I left because of creative differences. I was creative and they were different.
Great
he
line.
never holds back on his
No.
feelings. Yeah.
Then Martin Short and Pamela Stevenson.
Interesting
All
thing
right.
about Pamela Stevenson is Andrea Martin from SCTV,
Yeah. Yes.
Martin Short's
Yeah.
old
Right.
castmate, tried out for the show, lost out to Pamela Stevenson. And a lot of people don't know this. Jan Hooks auditioned.
Did she really?
And
Back
also
then?
lost out to Pamela Stevenson. And not only that, Jan auditioned the next year and got turned down.
Really?
And then didn't make it until 86. And we all know
That
what
was-
she
yeah.
went on
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
compared to Pamela Stevenson.
And she lasted until Dice Clay.
Yeah, right.
But that's also a great testament to, trying and trying again. You think of that, what a
Yeah.
great
Continuing.
talent like that. I mean, anyone listening who doesn't know who that is, or even the people that do, who have been through those their own kind of trials and tribulations with their career.
Yeah.
Show up, keep trying, and eventually you'll get a shot.
And
But I
that
will
was
say-
her big break. Like
Yeah.
unlike a lot of the other players, in those early seasons, she had no cachet
Right.
coming in.
Especially with this
Right,
season.
with that
well, you got
lineup.
Billy Crystal
Right.
and Christopher Guest. Like
Yeah.
Billy Crystal was probably the biggest name that
Yeah,
season.
he had
Yep.
already had
He had already-
some
was
success.
there too.
Who?
Martin Short, I think.
Martin
was-
Short
yeah.
because of SCTV.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Sure.
And
and it's not that this is like an observation that anyone else could make. Just the youth, you see that youthful energy in them.
Oh,
but you
yeah.
see the seeds of kind of what they went on to continue to do.
Yeah.
Not that they weren't already established, so many of these people, but you see the seeds of greatness.
When you look back at it now,
it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
fun
Yeah.
to watch.
but you think that the very first episode, you had Ed Grimley auditioning, doing an interview to get on Wheel of Fortune,
That was
Yeah.
great.
which is brilliant. You had synchronized swimming in the first episode,
Interesting story about that, but you can continue.
which is great. They had no host
Right.
on the first
Really?
episode.
Just
There was
Billy
no
Crystal
host.
did the monologue.
Yeah, he did the opening monologue. Rich Hall did he did
campaign piece.
the election report.
Yeah.
He did that several times throughout the season because Reagan was running for his second term, and he did several funny election reports throughout the season. I got a list of them here that I'm looking at. But synchronized swimming. You had Fernando Lamas
look
did the
marvelous.
news
Right.
that night,
He did.
that first night, and during the news, Julie Louis-Dreyfus did an interview with Jim Belushi as Bob Guccione from Penthouse on why he was doing the Vanessa
great.
Williams
Vanessa Williams spread.
spread.
Now, one thing I do want to say, because Brendan said he went back and watched some episodes, and I did the same. And to anybody who did not see that season,
They cut a
Yeah.
lot of stuff out.
Right.
if you go to Peacock to watch this, like I stopped watching after 6 episodes because I was
Really?
getting so fucking
Yeah.
pissed. How do you not leave in synchronized swimming?
Yeah, it's cut out of
in
the first
Took it out?
episode.
Really?
Cut out of
First
it out.
Yeah.
Do you
He
think
took it
it's
out.
because? Do you think it's because he took it out?
He took
So what you're saying
It's
is
out.
you're not happy with your Peacock.
Because they took it out. It writes itself.
They took several things out throughout that
so
whole
do you
season.
think that's because of
No.
the sensitivity
No.
of the?
Well, they claim it was for like time and fitment and stuff like that.
That's
but
one of the classic skits.
Yeah.
though.
You know what?
You
I'm
can't.
out of work. Let me edit those episodes.
exactly.
Because I watched the Jesse Jackson episode, and this is the weird
Yes.
thing. We all have our influences. We all became who we were as writers and comedians from things that we watched. And to me, SNL that season was like a masterclass. And I
Yeah.
just like studied it. I would tape
Yeah.
it. I would rewind it and see how they
Yep.
did things. And I'm watching the Jesse Jackson episode. And the shit that they cut out of that too, I was just like, I can't
Really?
watch this anymore because I'm getting so angry.
But it's funny that you say, did they cut it out because of sensitivity? At the beginning of the Jesse Jackson one, when he was doing his opening monologue,
Oh, yeah, the
and
control
he's
room.
like, there's a buzzing. I'm going to go up to the control room, and they then flash to the control room, and it's all white people, and they go, he's coming up here, everybody out, and all the white people run out of the control room, and all black people run in and sit down,
Throwing the headphones
and
on.
Jesse comes in and he goes, hey guys, there's some kind of buzzing going on. They go,
you need more feedback.
you need more feedback. He
No.
goes, no, I have too much feedback. He'll go,
Oh, right, right.
okay.
Feedback
Yes,
is bad. That's right, yeah.
Feedback's bad. He goes, all right, as long as you're in control and you got this. And,
Oh my God!
yeah, and then he leaves, and all the
And they
white guys
kept-
come back in,
and they kept that in.
and they leave that in.
but synchronized swimming, no.
And the guy who was playing the African American director turns to the white director, Davey, and says, "You still want your car at the same time?"
yes, yes.
Oh my God!
So,
and they kept that
It's
in.
not a sensitivity.
It wasn't a
Okay.
sensitivity thing.
Wow.
Yeah, that's funny you say that.
To go back to the first episode, a very interesting story about it was Martin Short was more stressed out about that season of Saturday Night Live than anything else he'd ever done in his
Really?
career. So for people who don't know, on Saturday nights, from 8 to 10, they do a live dress rehearsal, which
Yep.
they shoot, and they have a full audience for it. And
Right.
then they scramble and they decide what half hour needs to come out.
Right.
Well, Martin Short is a part of the dress rehearsal, and it bombs. And he calls his wife in between and said, my fucking career is over. He said, this thing is an absolute shit show. So they go back up to the office, and they're scrambling. Synchronized swimming, I think, wasn't supposed to air until week 3.
Yeah.
So they moved
They
that
moved
to the
it.
top of the show. You wouldn't know by fucking Peacock, but they did. And they scrambled a few things around,
Yep.
and then his wife watched it, and she's like, what the hell are you talking
This
about?
is
That was
gold. Yeah,
brilliant."
right.
And
It's because synchronized swimming gave it such a good lead in
Exactly
that it just
right.
worked.
Well, the cold opening was another film that week. I don't think they showed it on
They
Peacock.
didn't, no.
It was Lifestyles of the Relatives
Oh,
of the Rich and Famous.
Rich and famous. Yeah.
And he played Nelson Hepburn, the nephew of Katharine Hepburn. Yeah. And he was all strung out and everything. And he was hilarious. He was absolutely hilarious. But that didn't make it onto
that's
Peacock
right. I forgot
either.
about that when I was watching it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So
that
bizarre.
sketch definitely influenced one of the first sketches I wrote in LA for another show that I was part of a team. to
Singled
write
out.
for.
Which dating show was it, Dan?
It was called it was for Eddie Lambini, who was the stepbrother elf of the elf family that makes the cookies, right? So
Keebler?
E.L.
Ernie
Fudge
Keebler?
was Eddie Lambini, and he's like, they even took my initials. Right? And then, so it was this whole sketch, but it was because of that. It was
Because of that?
the relatives of the life of the rich and famous. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And they did that a couple times throughout the season. That
Yes.
you know, sketch the relatives of the rich and famous. Which that was another thing with this season is there was a ton of recurring characters and even
yeah.
commercials, because there was this one, and I forget what the name of it is. I'll look through here in a minute. It was this airborne contraceptive commercial, and they aired it about 5 or 6 times, different versions of it. That was absolutely hilarious too. And they did that with several things. Obviously, Ed Grimley kept coming back. Fernando's Hideaway kept coming back, and I you know,
Hey, you ever take one of those?
with Frankie and Willie.
Ball paint hammers?
Yeah.
That's the ticket.
And you just start.
when that happens.
Yeah, I hate when that happens.
Did you ever take some of those knitting needles? Yeah, and you pierce them right through your nipples, and then you spin them round and round, and let them go like one of those B-12 bombers. Yeah, that's a ticket.
One of the interesting things about that season too was they were able to draw from existing characters like Martin Short with Ed Grimley,
Right,
which he had done
Right,
on
which he had done on
Right.
SCTV. I'm surprised he was able to pull that over.
Yeah, that they would allow for
That
him
they would
to have
allow
the
for him
rights.
to do it.
But Canada, they're not going to fight us.
Yeah, they don't give a fuck.
But another interesting thing in rewatching it that I hadn't remembered, I'm a huge Christopher Guest fan.
Yeah.
Love Christopher Guest.
And A Mighty Wind is
Yes.
Come on.
a really, really
Yeah.
good movie. I the first time I saw it, I was like, I don't know if I like it as much as the others, but if you go back and watch it now, it's
Yeah.
very well done.
And they do them.
They do not only all 3 of the characters, and again, this is
Yeah.
1984, and that movie
Yeah.
came out in
Right.
I
don't
think
know.
it was
90s
They said
or- yeah.
17 years later they played those guys in that movie.
And they're playing the songs
Yes.
that they play in the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
They even had all
They
the
had
stuff
it that
over there.
long
the
ago.
Folksmen.
Right.
Yeah.
When Michael McKean was the host.
Yeah.
And they played,
that's right.
and they were one of the 2 musical guests
Right.
that night.
Right.
Didn't
Yeah.
Michael McKean join the cast later, like years
He
later?
did. The year that Phil left,
Right.
Michael McKean was essentially Phil's
Phil's
replacement.
Talented.
And
He's
I
incredible in that
vividly-
episode he hosts. He's doing everything.
I vividly
great.
remember
Yes, yeah.
talking to Phil after the first episode, and Michael McKean did Clinton, and like Phil was all bummed out, and he's just like, you think he was better than me?
Oh man.
Really?
You know,
It just shows you, even when you're like at the apex, the zenith
Oh, yeah.
of impressions, you still have that. Is he better than
Is
me?
he better than
How
me?
crazy
The
is
first
that?
season of News Radio, he called me one day and he's just like, I don't feel like I'm cutting it. I'm like, you're the whole goddamn
The whole show is
And
built
I'm sitting
around
there,
him.
I'm like, here I am. I'm 25. I'm talking Phil Hartman off of a ledge. What
Right.
fucking chance do I have? I was like, I've got my own mental health issues. But I'm like, Jesus, Phil Hartman, come
Listen,
on.
Phil, it's not all about you.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite moments though, because as good as the writing was this season, there was a moment that was just like spur of the moment. I forget which episode it was, but Fernando's Hideaway. And I've heard Billy Crystal tell this story. This is a real story. He had Barry Manilow on.
Oh, I love this story.
Barry Manilow was really supposed to be his guest. He was playing Radio City Music Hall. And Barry Manilow came over for the dress rehearsal. And Barry Manilow felt so embarrassed that he chickened out and didn't come back for the live show.
No way.
So they grabbed a cameraman.
Were they expecting him? He thought
He was supposed to be.
They thought he was going to come back.
Wow.
So Billy Crystal said, "We're doing it anyway."
This heavy set
and he grabbed a
cameraman.
300-pound cameraman with glasses and sat him down and just told the guy, "Just go with it." They hadn't rehearsed or anything.
And they put on the Chiron Barry Manilow.
And they put Barry Manilow, and the guy's name was Bob something. And he said, and so he goes, "Barry, let me ask you something. What is it like to write the songs that the whole world sing?" And the guy without skipping a beat goes, "Well, it's a lot of pressure, Fernando, if I'm being honest with you."
Oh, that's
Do
genius.
you find it difficult to love?
And the guy just answered his questions and played
And it
along.
was so much better than it
Yes.
would
Than it would
have
have
been.
been.
with
yeah.
Barry
One of those
Manilow.
magic moments.
It
where it's
played better, and
a happy accident.
And
Yeah.
at the end, when they're all out on stage, Billy Crystal goes, "Before we do anything, I have to thank our cameraman Bob. This really happened. Barry was supposed to be here tonight, guys. This was not.
gave him
He was
credit.
not supposed to sit down, but he was so good. I want to give him credit." And everyone
So good.
went crazy. The audience went crazy. That really happened. That
that's
was not
beautiful.
planned. The
That's
guy
beautiful.
played it so well.
What would they have done if Barry was the musical guest? I would have loved to have seen
Yeah,
that guy doing
cameraman.
Copacabana.
The cameraman.
That guy just played it straight. Just he didn't try to do an accent or a
Yeah,
voice.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
just answered his questions.
yeah.
And that
And
makes
you
it
know-
10 times funnier.
Yes,
when
you know they
Yeah,
were shitting their
sure.
pants, and then you end up getting that. And to speak to what you said about the level of writing, one thing that needs to be brought up is it is the one season that Larry David
Yes.
wrote for Saturday Night Live, got one sketch
I was
on
just gonna say.
at like 5-1, and actually, people may know the story. Quit one night.
Yes.
And based the Seinfeld episode on it.
On
left.
that, yeah.
He's walking home in the snow, and he's like, "What the hell have I just done?"
Yeah.
And he actually went to talk to Kenny Kramer, his neighbor, about it. And he's like, "Well, just go
Just
back in
go
on
back
Monday
in,
and pretend
yeah.
that nothing happened."
Yes.
And
Yeah.
he did, and that happened. And to show you the level of the writing, he submitted sketches that all turned into Seinfeld episodes.
Seinfeld
and he couldn't
episodes,
get
right.
anything on. When
Yeah.
when the season was over, he rented a church basement and had a bunch of his friends, and they all went and they acted out every sketch
That he had
didn't
written?
get on the show.
Isn't that
which killed
amazing?
in front of an audience, and they
Holy
all.
shit,
Another
dude,
example of-
You've been there for. Why are we
I was
here?
just gonna say, I'll shut up now.
lived all of this.
Can't,
Well, I mean,
Yes.
I spent because
you
of
can
Phil.
get out. I'm kind of trapped over here.
Fair enough.
Kind of stuck.
Well,
What am I
mean,
taking up too much space for you?
I got to spend time at SNL because
Right, because you
Phil's
knew
last
Phil.
year.
Yeah.
So,
Wait a minute,
and
you knew Phil Hartman? Very rarely.
That
mentions-
is.
he's pissed because I never bragged that I know Brendan Kirby.
I
Yes,
was-
exactly.
Neither does my mother. So
But
No, but that's the crazy thing is imagine, so just like you were saying how Jan Hooks tried and tried, finally got on. Imagine if Larry David just was like, I'm throwing all these things out, some of the greatest sketches from Seinfeld. And the fact that because now all I could think of is George going, "Oh, you thought I was serious?"
Yeah.
He just walks back into
But
the
imagine,
office.
okay, you're on the writing staff there, and you're competing with Billy Crystal, who's submitting his ideas.
Christopher Guest.
Christopher Guest, Martin
Yeah.
Short, all
Harry
these guys
Shearer.
that not only are playing the characters and play them so well, they know how to write for them too.
Right.
Right, it's their voice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
so,
it's also a testament to the fact that the best stuff comes from the real life event. You guys, we
Right.
all know
Oh,
this,
yeah.
but you just draw. I mean, you draw from what happens. You turn it into
yeah,
something amazing,
exactly.
whether it's good or
But,
bad.
You know, an interesting thing about writing, and so we all know this, right? You write something, whether it's a joke or a sketch, and inevitably at some point during the process, they'll say, I would never say that, right? So you have to then go back and tweak and go, fuck, okay.
What would their voice be?
right,
How
right.
can I get this joke across, but in their voice?
Exactly. So, Scott, to your point, it's like when you have the person doing it, participating
Yeah.
in that.
Right.
Well, how do you
And they're
even-
rewriting
Right.
everything you
Right.
pitch, right?
Yeah.
that's
incredible.
got to be
nuts.
that's a lot of pressure.
It's
That's a lot of tough.
tremendous pressure.
You know,
Because
And then
anytime
imagine-
I would write host copy, it was for another person in another room,
Right.
who just said, "Just show me the
Right.
you know, the read, and I'll do it."
And you're waiting for them to just look at it and go, pretty,
Yeah, fine.
pretty good.
Yep.
no, you know, and think of some of the characters that came out of that season. That was one of the things that you talked about, you know, Frankie and Willie, but then they also had the two other guys that did like the Super Bowl. They this is like so unbelievable. You know, those two guys.
And let's not forget Nathan Thurm.
Nathan Thurm was in much more than I thought he was, because obviously he was in the 60-minute sketch
Was this-
with the Minkmans, which is fantastic. But he also was on
What
the
makes you say that?
news several times where they were talking about a news story, and they'd say, and we're going to go to the person's lawyer right now, and then all of a sudden the screen behind the news person, there's Nathan Thurm with the sweat coming down his brow.
What
and
makes
the
you
big
say that?
ash,
I don't understand.
You know, why would you ask me? Why would I know that?
And we know now. Let's talk about the backstory of that, because I know that's where you're jumping in with. I
Yeah.
know it too, because it's hilarious.
So the story is, and Martin Short has told it many times.
Yeah.
He literally based Nathan Thurm on, I think it was
The
woman
makeup
who
artist.
did his makeup.
Yeah.
He did everybody's makeup
Yeah.
on the show, and he was so terrified that she was going to figure it out.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
she did not recognize it at all until the
But
very
she-
last episode that he
Right.
finally went in full disclosure to her. Told her he was based on you, but in an affectionate way.
and she said,
I would never say that.
"I knew that.
I knew that. I would never say that.
I don't sound anything like that.
I don't sound anything like yeah."
There was an sketch where they did Nathan Thurm having an affair on his wife. But there was you know.
Didn't they call we were talking about this, the middle, wasn't Weekend Update that year. They
No,
changed it to something.
They didn't call it Weekend Update. It was
Saturday
just
night,
Saturday Night News.
yeah.
And like when Bob Uecker was the host, he did the news. When George Carlin was the host, he did the news. But then
so
towards
whoever was the guest did the news.
But the second half of the season, Christopher Guest did it more than anybody else.
Oh,
It kind of migrated to him, but they would do news almost in segments. Like in between sketches, they'd have somebody do a couple news reports and then do some more sketches, then do another news report type of thing.
Well,
it
Ebersol-
wasn't a set
Standalone.
standalone like it is
Hey, you know
now.
why they did that? It's Norm Macdonald wasn't on yet.
Ebersol wanted.
Why is that, Norm?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was gay.
Ebersol wanted.
Everyone
to
says
put
the
his-
bad thing about the Cosby thing is the hypocrisy. I don't think it's the hypocrisy. I think it was the raping.
Sorry, I just love that.
No,
That's
it's
my
great.
favorite Norm joke, and I just love doing it.
I think one of my favorite Norm jokes was on Weekend Update, where he said, "Kenny G has a new Christmas album out this week. Happy birthday, Jesus! Hope you like crap."
completely unafraid.
Yeah,
I know.
Completely fearless.
Oh, I mean, just the OJ stuff when he knew
When
it
he
was going to
knew.
get him fired.
Oh, I know.
Oh, yeah.
With Olmeyer, and he
Not
just
caring.
didn't care. But the interesting thing about the news and the look
Yeah.
of the show, Ebersol wanted it to not look like Lorne's SNL.
He wanted to
To the extent
make it
that
its own
the
thing.
opening credits, and a lot of people might not know this, but they have almost kind of like some animation in them in the
Yeah,
city.
yeah.
That was done by the guy who directed the "You Might Think" video by the Cars.
Really? It does look like that.
And it does.
Yeah.
It does, now that you say that, it looks just like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after Scherer left the show, it was going to fuck everything up, so they just left him in the credits for like.
Did they really for the rest of the season?
Oh, that's funny.
Oh my god.
And for as great as that season was, a lot of people don't know. Only 17 episodes.
Right,
There was a writer's strike that shut it
Oh,
down.
that was the writer's strike.
That's why it
year.
only had 17 episodes.
Oh.
Now, when
another
they
writer's strike a few years later, but this one predates. You're right. It was, yeah, right.
Now, when they did, political things, it wasn't like nowadays where it's just overdone and leaning a certain side. Like they had when Euchre was on, and if you watched it,
I was just going to say, how great was and is Bob Uecker?
Bob
I mean,
Uecker.
he's
He
been
was
so funny
fantastic.
for so that sketch
Yeah.
where he trades
trades
the
his son.
is tremendous.
Little League trade.
the
It was
beats.
great.
It's a slow sketch, but the beats are a
But
little
it builds.
but it's so brilliant in its
It is.
conceits.
It builds.
And I just was getting
What
such
did I
a
tell you
kick out of
before,
it.
Bobby? You
And then-
take it to the face.
and Billy Crystal playing that. It's great.
Yeah.
But when he takes the phone call from President Reagan,
Fantastic.
and Harry Shearer's playing Reagan, and as you go along, you realize that it's recorded.
It's recorded. Oh, yeah.
It wasn't really him on the phone. It was him. He recorded it earlier, Reagan, and they're
And
just
they
playing
just
it back.
say it right in the middle of the monologue. It's great.
Oh, it's plays so well, and that's what I liked is they didn't lean one side or another. They just played it silly.
Even in that
Yeah.
first Rich Hall campaign update, they intersperse the actual
Yes,
footage.
yeah.
with him
Mondale
yelling. It's-
flipping him off.
It's really great. It's really great.
And he goes, $500 plate dinner. Can I get a cup of coffee? That's $140. I'll just get some water.
yeah,
Yeah, but now
good stuff.
it's become so sanctimonious and almost angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it really, regardless of what side you're on, you're like, oh, come, I just want to fucking
Just
laugh.
make it funny.
Yeah.
Just
And-
make it
and-
I don't want to
funny.
get preached to.
And Carvey and Phil were so cognizant of make Bush cartoonish,
Yes.
make, Clinton cartoonish, and something that
I
wasn't.
mean, Ross Perot was already cartoonish, but
Yeah.
exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
we're gonna do this. We're gonna.
One of- one of
we're
my-
gonna get some charts and graphs. That's what we're gonna do.
One of my favorite Carvey ones when he was Bush was when he was debating Dukakis
Yeah.
with John Lovitz.
I can't believe I'm listening to this guy.
That line right there. When he goes, 1,000 points of light.
Stay the course.
Stay the course. 1,000 points of
When they
light.
have
And he goes,
Dukakis lifted up.
I can't believe I'm losing to this guy.
They have him on the motorized thing.
It was just such a great
I
line.
remember that.
One of the great
line.
one of the great bits that they had on that episode too was just like the angry political ads, the negative stuff. They said they had a Dukakis said, "This is George Bush when he was 25 years old. This is Barbara Bush when she was 25 years old. This is Barbara Bush now. George Bush. Imagine what he'd do to our country."
Oh my God.
And they've always brought in political
Yeah.
figures.
Oh, sure.
But with Chevy Chase playing Gerald Ford just being a bumbling idiot falling down the stairs, Dan Aykroyd playing Jimmy Carter talking a guy down that OD'd on drugs and stuff like that.
Right.
It was just it was funny.
But it was silly.
It was
wasn't-
silly and it was
yeah.
funny.
And we were all in on the joke.
Yes,
Exactly.
Phil
Didn't
Hartman's
matter
Reagan.
what side
Back
you
to
were on.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they cut and
Yeah.
back to work, or when he was Clinton and he was over sexualized, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna have some go into my presidential briefs in a minute," and he holds up his finger and the underwear's hanging from his finger and stuff like that. They always found a way to just make it
Make
funny
it
and
silly.
not political,
Right.
Right.
And now they're too worried about making it political, and it's just not
For
funny
years,
anymore.
they've-
Well, there's
Yeah.
the purity to the other stuff, the older stuff.
Well, yeah. Also, I think there wasn't a divided country. back
Yeah.
then.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
that's-
But Rob Schneider, who's a prick.
yes, he is.
There's the soundbite.
There's the soundbite.
Can we talk after?
Sure. I've got some
I
stories.
opened for him for a year, a little more than a year.
Oh my
and
God.
Are you going to corroborate the story or?
I will corroborate anything.
Oh,
against
all right.
him. He's a schmuck.
All right.
But
I was going to say you're not breaking
That's
news
awesome.
with
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
No,
no, I heard he's a dick.
But he did something
Yeah.
so reprehensible. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
after.
he made an excellent point, and he said when SNL jumped the shark was after the election when Trump won.
Yep.
And they have Hillary, played by who's very, very talented. Her name is
Amy
suddenly
Poehler?
escaping
Amy Poehler?
me.
No,
No, not Amy Poehler.
Kate.
Kate McKinnon.
yes,
Kate McKinnon.
Big teeth.
Yeah.
They comes out dramatically, the camera sweep, and her playing Hallelujah on the piano, and he's like, "Where's the fucking joke? Are you kidding me
Right.
with this right now?
Yeah, you're literally-
This is Saturday Night Live."
You're making it a funeral. You're
Yeah.
making it a funeral because your candidate didn't win.
And
that's
that
the
would
thing.
have
It didn't
never
matter.
happened in the 80s.
It didn't
never-
right. It didn't matter if you were Republican or
right.
if you were a Democrat. You got made fun of.
That's right.
And that's it.
And everybody accepted it.
Yeah, exactly. Because it
Everybody
wasn't
accepted
malicious
it.
either.
That's right.
It was just poking fun and being silly.
Yes.
And back then, I remember my parents' generation was you had you were Republican, you were Democrat, you voted, but then once it was done, whoever was the president, I remember even my grandfather going, "All right, you support the president once he's the president."
That's right. You
Whether you
respect the
voted
office.
Right.
whether you voted for him or not, he is now the president of the country. You get behind the president.
And I do want to give credit to the guy who is a featured player now, who I think does Trump brilliantly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not as sanctimonious. It's just it's kind of cartoonish, and it reminds me of that era of how they.
Well,
did
he doesn't do
television.
the over the top that Alec Baldwin did.
Right.
Right.
He plays it down, so it's better.
And the impression is just so dead
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
It's the best
yeah.
Trump
Really
I've ever
good.
seen. He's really
And
good.
and unlike Alec, he doesn't take personal shots.
Right. That's the thing.
I think it's so much stronger when they're not trying to comment on the subject.
Exactly.
It's like, this is
Yeah.
Just be silly.
some type of hyperbolic expression of comedic talent.
That's what
You're
made-
taking your anger and trying to pass it off as a joke.
right.
And I think that's what made Will Ferrell's George Bush work.
Yeah.
is
Because there was an
because-
innocence, like you
Right.
said.
Like when he did his one-man show.
Oh, yeah.
It was hilarious because same reason.
Even Daryl Hammond with his gore.
Yes,
was hilarious.
yes,
absolutely.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Now another thing that I noticed that season, obviously a different time, was a lot of the racial things they brought up. We mentioned the Jesse Jackson, but they also had a recurring piece, that Mr. White guy that they had.
Oh, yeah.
It was Jim Belushi played Mr. White Guy, and they had an episode where there was Mr. White Guy and his white friend. They had Mr. White Guy and Mrs. White Woman, and they just kept playing this. And they'd come out and he would talk or he'd sing, and it would just, they never addressed it. They just called him Mr. White Guy. And then they had like a sketch where they did Billy Crystal and Christopher Guest played two guys that played in the baseball and the Negro leagues, and they called
Right.
it Negro Baseball was the name of the sketch,
Right.
and stuff like that. And they just did these sketches straight up. But one of the things that I think that they were able to do, that they were able to get away with this stuff, even then, you're still kind of pushing buttons and envelopes a little, is they created real characters with these people. They weren't cartoons, they were real people with their characters, which was how they got away with it.
Well, it's funny how we watch things now.
Well,
versus how
we're
we did
looking,
back then.
We're looking through today's lens,
Right.
so
Because
you look at it differently.
You look at that cast and you're like, boy, that's a really white cast.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
just
yeah.
Of
No
course it was.
Yes.
Diversity. But back
Garrett
then,
Morris.
I think what a lot of people are thinking that right now. Too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, maybe we should have Dwayne Perkins fly out,
I'll get him on speaker.
Yeah, get him on speaker, man.
but I think back then too, it's just, I mean, the whole cast was so talented.
Right,
You know, that
right.
wasn't anything that crossed your mind.
Well, and because honestly, think about it. If that was a year after Eddie Murphy had blown up so big.
Exactly.
Any African American cast member
been
was
immediately
going to be
compared.
was
Yeah.
going to be immediately held up to the standard. Oh, they're not as funny. Oh, the black guy on SNL isn't as funny as
Was
him.
I don't recall. Maybe you could
Yeah.
tell me. Was there ever a comparison of any kind between Garrett Morris and
No.
Eddie Murphy? Because
No,
I don't remember.
I don't remember
because
it.
Garrett Morris,
Because Garrett Morris did. I mean, he was
wasn't that
great.
shooting star.
Right.
He was more of a utility guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I mean,
Yeah.
He had
And
some
and
great
was,
skits.
Yeah, he was
Yes.
great for what he did.
But the reach of Eddie Murphy and how it affected future African Americans on the
Right.
cast, Chris Rock, who, by the
Yes,
way, was on
yes.
SNL and did next to nothing.
Yeah. Right.
And we all know
Yeah.
how talented he
Yeah.
is.
Nat
Yes.
X.
Yeah.
He said even then, he felt like years later, he was still living
Being
in the
compared to
shadow
Eddie. Yeah.
of Eddie Murphy on that show.
Yeah, because if you think about it, Garrett Morris didn't go on to be this massive movie star.
yeah,
For a
no,
long
not
time,
at
he
all.
wasn't doing anything. Honestly, the first thing I saw him doing really of any substance was Two Broke Girls, like, what, 8 years ago, 9 years ago? And he was great on that.
So 10
and he
years
should be
ago-
used more.
He did open a comedy club in L.A. I don't know
Oh,
if you
did
guys
he?
know that. Yeah, and I headlined there, as a matter of fact, about a month before I moved back here. in
Yeah,
2010.
really?
Super nice guy, but clearly content, kind of. with
Yeah,
being-
with being where he is.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
he is and kind of doing his
Which
own
is
thing.
fine.
You know what? And good for him.
Absolutely. If
Good
you're
for
happy,
him.
who cares?
Right. Guy's what, almost 80 or
Oh, at
close
least.
to it?
Can-
Because he
at
was an
least.
older guy
Yes.
on that show.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Look, 10 years ago when we were there and my wife and I, who's pregnant at the time, hung out with him, got our picture taken with him. Even then, all gray and was walking with a cane, and he needed the cane.
Wow.
And that was 11 years ago.
11 years ago, and he's still going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just
You know.
jumping through.
That's probably why on Two Broke Girls, he was always sitting down.
I believe so.
I'm jumping through episode by episode, looking at the different sketches, and I remember this one so well. It was a filmed piece called "Profile in Sports" with Jim Belushi, where he was playing the chess coach.
Oh,
yes, I remember that.
Screaming at the kids.
He played angry so bad.
Yes.
Why would you move your rook? Why would you screaming at him like a basketball coach or a football coach?
Flipping the chessboard over.
Throwing his chair like Bobby Knight.
And you know what's
Back
funny
in the
though?
basketball days.
castling. You call that castling.
You know what's funny
Played
though?
it so well.
I don't remember much of Jim Belushi on that season. The one thing I remember from him, it was superhero Christmas party or something where he played the Hulk.
Right,
And I
right.
just remembered that he farted and he was like, "Oh, sorry guys."
No, that wasn't him. That was John Belushi that did that.
Oh,
I don't think it
I
was.
think you might be right.
John
I
Belushi
think
did
it was
it.
John Belushi.
Are you sure? I could have
I'm
sworn it was
pretty
Jim.
sure.
Are they related?
I heard. Maybe.
No, it's spelled differently.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, completely different.
Different body types as well. I could see John Belushi as more of a Hulk.
Because he walked up
Yeah,
to Bill Murray that was playing Superman, and he shook his hand, and he
Oh,
goes,
yeah,
"Ooh, let go,
yeah.
let go, let go." Ah, I got you. But it was John
you're
Belushi
right,
that played
you're
the
right.
Hulk.
You're
For
right.
some
It was
reason,
John
I thought
Belushi
it was
played it.
Jim.
So you remember
All right.
nothing of Jim Belushi.
I would say I remember nothing.
It's
then.
official. Yeah.
K9,
And I would
anyone?
say cut this whole segment out, but Scott doesn't edit, so go ahead. I'll look like an ass
Here
yet
we go
again.
He'd be doing a lot of editing. No, it's just,
Ah, wow, you're here all week. Try to feel,
please.
huh?
I just,
Yeah,
you guys would have said it to me.
yeah, we probably would have. You're right, we would have. So Scott's still scrolling through to see who's
Booking
on.
flights.
Ed Asner
Different-
as a host.
Oh yeah.
Ed
yeah.
Asner, Wow.
Playing. Ed Grimley's father.
That's right.
At
I remember
Thanksgiving.
that. Yeah.
I don't remember that.
I do remember that.
I would love to see that. And there was another episode that I do remember. Howard Cosell playing Ed Grimley's uncle.
Oh man,
I do remember
that's
that.
And
what I'm
Howard
thinking of.
Cosell
That's what I'm thinking
had a
of.
wig on where he
Yeah.
had his hair the same as Ed
Yeah.
Grimley.
I do remember that
Stuff is
now.
great.
Wow.
I just love a good solid premise like that. The chess I mean, the idea
yeah.
is so strong. It's awesome.
And you know what? A sketch like that on Saturday Night Live that was very similar, where they did a profile in sports, was Melissa McCarthy, where she played the women's basketball coach that just tortured her team horribly, and they had hidden cameras where they showed her just treating people awfully. And whenever they would interview people, then they'd go back for a second interview, and the people like, "No, she's very nice," and the people all bruised and beat up and everything.
Solid.
And they've gone back and pulled stuff from the past and redid them in current
even-
day. But you need the right personality to play
Peyton
the
Manning
parts.
playing football with the
with
kids.
the kids.
Oh my God.
That's it. Go sit in
Yes.
the porta toilet for 40 minutes. But this was the first time I've seen so many characters that they recurred over and over
Yes.
and over again.
I wonder if they felt like they had to do that, maybe, like because they were just
Well,
this
had to
rare
or
season.
realized that they unlocked
Yeah.
right a new
Good
way
point.
to
do it.
to
Right.
bring back content that was popular. Like so I get, is that the question then? Is season 10 the first season they realized that, hey, we could capitalize on some of these characters that people talk about and people love?
Yeah.
Well, I
I don't
mean,
know,
I think
but they
dating
did that-
back to Gilda Radner doing Rosanna Dan, and a lot of like
Sure.
the update stuff.
Yeah.
Emily Latella, and they would bring certain
Bill
characters
Murray,
back
the
that way.
lounge singer.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Yeah,
there
but
were
it was
other
like 1 or 2 a
characters.
season.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
This was that season.
It was almost every show. Fernando was on.
Fernando and Ed Grimley appeared in out of
Every-
17, at least 10 to 12 of them.
Yeah.
Even Billy doing Sammy Davis Jr. You'd see that.
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
to time
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, him and Ringo Starr. And that episode was a good one.
Who is the insult comic?
Oh, Buddy Young Jr.
Buddy Young Jr.
That's
Billy
a
Crystal.
great
Yeah,
sketch.
yeah,
I love
Yeah.
that. I
He-
was laughing out
because
loud.
he's not even
turned it-
funny. He's just
Right.
so rude.
and he turned it into a movie.
And it turned into a Mr.
And
Mr.
a Broadway
Saturday
show.
Night.
Well,
And
it's
now-
a Broadway show right now.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
But Mr. Saturday Night was a brilliant
Oh
movie.
my
Yeah.
God! I love the fact.
Every comic has to watch that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that not only is Billy Crystal in it, but David Paymer, who played
Yes,
his
right.
brother
Yes.
in the movie, is also in the play.
Right.
I'd love
Right.
to go see that play.
Well, there's also one whole
Road trip.
Let's do it.
Let's go, guys.
There's one whole episode that season where Eddie Murphy hosted,
Right.
and he did like every sketch.
Isn't
They-
he playing the James Brown the hot tub.
He did in one of the
That's
episodes.
like early on in the season. He does.
But
the
when he
special
hosted,
appearance.
he did Buckwheat, he did Mr.
Gumby?
Robinson. But
That
that's
was the
also when they showed the film
White guy.
White Like Me.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God!
Which
was that-
again, that's another one nowadays you'd never get away with it, but it was hilarious.
You know the hilarious thing in that sketch. He looked just like one of the captains on the fire department. We used to call him White Like Me all the time.
Mr. White.
He looked just like him. I mean, he was actually a white guy, but in that with the mustache and everything, we're like, Billy, oh my God, it looks like you.
Wow.
Doug White.
There's that scene when he
For
walks
the Rhode
in,
Island viewers.
and,
No.
Jim Downey, who was a writer on the show, is working behind a counter at a convenience store, and then Eddie brings up a newspaper, and he's like, "No, go ahead, take it, just take it." One thing I've learned is that white people like to give things to each other.
Yes. Just
And
take
then-
it.
And correct me if I'm wrong. During that sketch, didn't he break the wall at one point and look at the
Yeah.
camera? Like,
Yeah,
What the
like what the fuck?
That was brilliant.
When he goes in for the loan,
Just the way he walks.
Yes.
He walks with his ass all tight.
he's like, "Do you know of any other banks like this in the area?"
Oh my God! So that was on the same season when he came back to host.
Yes,
Oh, I thought that
and
was
they
when he
had
was
another
on.
episode that was a film festival where they played a bunch of those little films that they did, and that one was played on it. But in between, they had Siskel and Ebert rating the different films, and then they had Fernando interview Siskel and Ebert.
Siskel and Ebert. Oh my God!
Yeah,
Great.
I would love to see that whole episode.
Let's run it right now.
Yeah, we would if it wasn't copyrighted.
But-
Because God forbid you show anything on a fucking podcast.
I know.
Synchronized.
We actually had Bobby Brajol on.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
We had him on. We went to play one of his songs while he was on. It's his fucking song. It got copyrighted. It
got pulled.
Yeah, it got pulled. They blocked out the sound on the feed because it said it was copyrighted.
do that.
Because he's
so
an
YouTube
on
uses
YouTube.
Shazam.
Yeah.
To
Probably,
snag
yeah.
people,
Because he's an
probably.
Orchard recording artist, which is part of Sony Music.
Right.
Yep.
Wow.
Even though he was the one with us when we
was
we
his
wanted to
song.
play.
Shazam into their algorithm.
Yeah, we wanted to play Chooch to Gooch or whatever the original
Yeah.
song
Yeah,
was
yeah.
that he did. And
Wow.
yeah, while he's sitting there,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm getting a memo saying that it's been blocked. And I go, what the hell is going on?
Now, in
Sorry.
in synchronized swimming, Martin Short's character, his name is Lawrence Orbach.
Okay.
I'm not a strong swimmer.
Which
Strongest swimmer.
which is one of the best lines in the whole
That's
thing.
the way he says
But
it.
they brought that character back a few times throughout the season, and one of my favorite moments was when Roy Scheider was a host, and they had a sketch called "Good Cop, Bad Cop," where Scheider and Lawrence Orbach are
my
the
God.
two cops, and they're going in to question Jim Belushi, and they said, "All right, we're going to pull the good cop, bad cop on him," and he has Lawrence play the bad cop.
Totally what you weren't expecting,
Exactly.
right?
And speaking too of things that they did early on that went on to be something else later,
Yeah.
in synchronized swimming, Christopher Guest doing an early version of Corky St.
Yes,
Clair from
Yes,
Waiting for Guffman.
Yes.
From Waiting
Hey,
for Guffman.
You.
I know you. I know
You're
you.
not angry.
You're just pointing at him.
You're not angry. You're just pointing. Hey,
It is
you.
true.
I know you. I know you.
So-
Sometimes when you get two swimmers together,
So did I probably should have done research, but did Spinal Tap play on that season?
No.
Like, did Spinal Tap
No.
come out of that, or was that
no,
after?
and Spinal Tap movie was before this season.
Oh, it was,
Spinal Tap
okay.
was 84, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Spinal Tap was
they were
before
eventually on the show, but it was after
It
that.
was after
Afterwards.
this season.
One of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life in person. Michael McKean got the Pell Award a few years ago. Actually,
Really?
Charles Rocket was there. Like I saw him right
really?
before he
Right
died.
before he passed away?
So, so it's McKean there, Christopher Guest is there, Harry Shearer is there, and I had media credentials when I actually collected a paycheck, and they did a thing.
I don't think he's over it yet.
I'm not bitter.
No, not at
Not
all.
anymore. I mean, I think we're gonna run low.
Pass me the Willet if I got to listen to this fucking story again.
So that night at the Newport Blues Cafe,
Yeah.
it is Christopher Guest, Harry Shearer, Michael McKean, Spinal Tap songs, stories,
Oh my God.
Songs from Waiting
Get
for
out.
Guffman, songs from A Mighty Wind. It was 2 hours of some of the best fucking entertainment
That
I have
must have been
ever seen in my
amazing.
life.
That is
It was
amazing. When was
mind-blowing. This was, I would say, 2004, 5.
that's
somewhere around there.
Did they call it the Preserved Moose Tour?
Nice. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
What was it? The armadillos in our trousers. The This Goes to 11 tour.
So great.
That I can quote.
Man.
The brilliance of Spinal Tap, too. I don't know if you guys have.
We should do a
been able
show
to
just
see
on
this.
Spinal Tap.
Or all of the Christopher
Yeah.
Guest
Yes.
movies.
Oh,
Yes.
and the genius of him is,
Yeah.
the improvisation in all of these movies. It's kind of like Kirby, you get an outline. One time, I was big into collecting bootlegs of, I was a big Van Halen fan, and I'd have all these concerts that were shot from 1,000 rows back and everything. But one of the bootlegs I got was 6 hours of unedited Spinal Tap.
No.
And it was all the stuff that did not get into the movie.
No way.
And when I tell you that he picked the precise 90 minutes that were perfect, because most of the rest of it is unwatchable.
Really?
And that is the genius of Christopher Guest.
Really? So were they improvising songs too? Or?
No, the songs were
The songs
actually
were
written.
okay.
Yeah, same thing with Waiting for Guffman. The songs that they
Oh,
did
I
in the
see. So it was
show.
the rest of the movie that was
Same thing with
just.
the Mighty
Imagine a
Wind.
lot of the OTF stuff they had to just sift through for hours and hours, but
Wow.
I thought you were going to say the stuff you couldn't believe the stuff that did, because a lot of times,
No,
you think, oh my God,
it
how
was-
did that not make it in? So
Right.
That's an interesting, unique take.
Honestly, I thought that's where he was going
Right.
with it.
And
It's
I
like,
was shocked because I'm like, oh my
glued.
God,
It was
wow.
all brilliant.
No, it all sucked.
It all
How
sucked.
did they get it done in 90 minutes? Like, no, 91 minutes would have been too long.
Kind of like Anchorman 2.
Oh,
Hey, what do we got left on the floor? Oh, let's scoop this shit together.
yeah.
Yeah,
That sequel should have been 10 minutes.
Yes, exactly.
By the way,
yeah,
I'm looking for Van Halen live in New Haven in 1984. Do you, have that?
You mean New Halen? Yeah. I'm sorry.
I bought a
probably
cassette
has
of
it.
a bootleg of
I
that,
have
and
it.
it was very good.
Awesome. All right. I
That
know
was
who
a
to
great
go to.
concert.
Awesome. That's great.
What else?
And just like that, we're out of time.
yeah.
No, another one that I don't remember, but I saw it when I looked up and stuff was the and I have it right here, the Muhammad Ali and Katharine Hepburn.
Oh, yeah.
The Kate and Ali,
Kate and
and
Ali,
they
yeah.
did several
Kate and Ali
specials
parody,
yeah.
with Martin Short as Katharine Hepburn, which he does a great Katharine
course,
Hepburn.
does everything
Of course
so well.
he
And
does.
it was Billy doing.
Oh,
Ali.
Norman, you old poop. It's time to say goodbye to the loons, And then Muhammad Ali is
Billy Crystal?
Billy Crystal.
Yeah. And they did a Valentine's Day special with the two of them. And I don't remember it,
I
but I
remember that,
want to
yeah.
see that so bad now because I can imagine what that was like because Billy Crystal tells some great Ali stories because he was friends
yeah.
with him.
Oh, yeah.
Ali wanted him
Everything.
to do the eulogy. And
Yes.
I think
Oh,
he
really?
specifically requested, and
That's
he
right.
crushed
Yeah.
it. It's so good.
But and again, I'm thinking of Mary Gross and some of the stuff that she did. She did Dr. Ruth Westheimer.
Yep.
And
Oh,
there
that's right.
there was
I am Dr. Ruth.
There was one of the skits, and I don't remember which episode it was on, where they had the Dr. Ruth and Dr. Seuss doing sex talk.
Oh, my God.
together.
Solid.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was Christopher Guest playing Dr. Seuss, and
Right.
her playing Dr. Ruth giving sex advice.
She also used to do Alfalfa.
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
her big
Yes.
character, too.
Yeah.
That's
Did
right.
she
Eddie
also
Murphy,
impress
yeah.
you?
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Or when Harry Anderson was on, and they basically did a version of Night Court, but during the Salem witch trials.
Oh my God.
The brilliant thing with her as Alfalfa was when they were parodying the Hinckley Reagan thing.
Yes.
Who shot
Buckwheat.
and it ended up being Alfalfa.
Yes. Yeah.
I wouldn't do it. He was my friend.
But even some of the smaller things they did, you could tell in the beginning when they were trying to fill for some time, they had a mailbag segment, and it was Mary Gross and Julia Louis
the guy
Dreyfus
breaking out of prison.
and they said, "Let's read some mail from fans."
It was clever.
And it actually was.
Yeah.
It was well done. Mary Gross pulls one out and she reads it, and it's from an inmate in a prison that's like infatuated with Julia. And then
Oh yeah.
and they
Texas.
said in Texas, and they
Right.
said, let's read another one from somebody else, and everyone they pulled out was from the same guy.
The same guy.
And
Like,
as they go along,
for this one,
That's
reach
awesome.
way down to the bottom.
yeah, reach way
Grab
down the bottom.
postcard.
He goes, I got out of prison. I'm on my way out. I'm in Ohio right now. And then all of a sudden, some cop comes over and he whispers, he's here.
Yeah, that's great.
It was just well
Mary
done.
Gross takes him home.
Yeah.
Walk out
She ends
together.
up leaving with him at the end of the sketch.
Now, we would be remiss. Somebody has to bring up Jackie Rogers Jr.'s
Jr.'s.
$100,000 jackpot wad.
My favorite character in that, I'm sorry, I got to jump in. Christopher Guest as Rajiv Vindaloo.
Chocolate babies?
It says here you're a private detective. Do you wear disguises? Yes, I've been known to wear a disguise or two.
Now, was Jackie?
And that wasn't the
Was
first
that
time he
the-
played Jackie Rogers. He had played him several times on the Joe Franklin show
Right.
with Billy Crystal before that.
Remind me,
sketch.
was that the old time piano? Give me a bouncy C.
Give me
Nope.
a C, a bouncy C.
A bouncy
No.
C.
Jackie Rogers Jr.
Yeah.
was this albino
Yeah, the
entertainer.
albino
Yeah.
entertainer.
Jackie Rogers Jr.'s $100,000 jack pot. What?
Oh my God.
He had Bob Keeshan
Oh, yeah.
and Sammy Davis Jr. as the two celebrity guests.
That's
Classic.
but see, that's what you don't see on SNL lately is silliness, you know? And I don't know if it's just because I don't know if that's what the writers want is more heavy topics or
No, you know what happened? We just all got old, and comedy.
yeah, well, now
just
we sound like the
changes.
old man on the front porch saying it's not like in
I
my
don't,
day.
I don't know if that's.
Can I ask you a question then?
If that's what it
know,
is.
I know we're older, but we're still watching the same show. I feel like when I watched all those years ago, I felt like I was watching people who were friends act. Now I feel like I'm watching comics who are just trying to further their own career and vying for their own camera time. I don't get the sense when I watch now.
You're not
that I'm
connecting
watching
with them
two
the same
friends.
way.
Right.
But
Right.
Moving
let's think about what it has become. It's not about the show anymore. Right. It's about what is going to go viral
Right.
after the show airs. And that kind of show is written differently. It's
Yeah.
performed differently. It's for another demographic. And
But I don't
Well,
know
here's a
because
question
I
for-
don't hear from younger people saying that they're watching. Like my
Right.
19-year-old doesn't watch
Yeah,
Saturday
no.
Night Live
Well,
or even know what some of the
neither of
skits
my
are.
kids can.
And
I'm talking people in their late 30s.
well, but
That's
I've
that's
even
younger than me.
said, but I've even said it too. The problem recently, and we've talked about this too, is even some of the great sketches now. There's some funny sketches they don't know how to end them, and I almost like.
They
I
just
was,
stopped
because
talking at some point.
The last time you guys were on and told me I needed to watch Curb, now I'm all the way through, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Now I realize what makes Larry David so genius is he knows how to end a scene. Yes, they meander, they have their outline, they start here, they got to get from point A to point B, they meander around. But there's a point B from the very beginning that they know they need to get to.
Here's a question
And it doesn't
for you.
seem like that on SNL anymore.
or a point or whatever, a talking point. You got Steve Martin Short, who comedy gods. They recently hosted Saturday Night Live back in December. I watched it because I absolutely worship those two guys. Terrible episode.
Really?
Their monologue was fantastic.
Yeah.
because it was the
'Cause
two
it
of
was
them
probably written
playing
by
off
them.
each other. They
They
did
read each other's obituary.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did. They read what they would say at each other's funerals. If
Best line of all was
Yeah.
Martin Short with the dick in a box for Steve
yes,
Martin.
yes.
As we've seen on the show.
He
In the
called Steve Martin a dick in a box.
Oh, my
If he
God,
was standing
that's
outside
awesome.
of his,
That is
casket,
great.
it was great. But then they get into the sketches, and the sketches were not great. They really weren't. But yet, you watch Only Murders in the Building, and it is silly fun.
Yep.
Well, it's funny.
And it's brilliantly funny, and I know young people that watch it, and yes, it helps that they have a young person in the show that draws people, but my 26-year-old watches it and thinks the show is brilliantly funny. I'm watching it, I think it's brilliantly funny, so it transcends generations, but yet Saturday Night Live doesn't.
As that episode was getting ready to air, my wife said to me, "Boy, this is going to be a really good one." I said,
I thought so too.
"Not so fast, Chuchi," because the problem is they're not writing everything. Now, a little thing that a lot of people don't know is a lot of times they will bring some of their own writers too.
Right.
But you've got 90 minutes to fill, and you've.
I was hoping that at least the first half hour of sketches would be the funny ones.
Right.
But even those
stuff
weren't.
that they brought.
Even those were not. Whereas you go back to the season that we're talking about tonight, and man, that show would come out of the gate strong. And even some of the late episodes that for years were always after the news, after that first hour,
There
was
were
kind
still
of the
funny ones.
The throwaway ones still had some funny episodes.
Honestly, in past years, I saw some of the ones from the dress rehearsals that never even made it to the show. I had so for a while they were coming out with those
I just watched
DVDs.
the Chris Farley one, and there's some stuff on there
Right,
too.
The Christopher Walken one, where he's the angel of death, and no one's ever seen that unless they get that
the
thing.
DVD, yep.
But it's hilarious. I don't know. I'm funky. I've always been funky.
Did that-
It's just silly.
Did that have the one where Mike Myers is the guy that owns the Scottish shop, and Christopher
all
Walken?
things Scottish.
Yes, and Christopher Walken plays his son.
I think so. I can't remember.
Oh, that's right, son. Come here, let me hug you.
Welcome to all things Scottish. Where if it's not Scottish, it's crap.
And it was only a dress rehearsal, and they cut it.
And so
But
that's
I-
probably one of the ones that's on that DVD too.
So let me ask you then, because we mentioned him earlier, the young guy, the young comic who does the Trump, and to your point about them aiming just to get something to go viral, are they primarily hiring one-trick ponies in the hopes that what they do so well goes viral?
Well, the guy that
viral.
does Trump does a few other things, does several impressions
understand,
well. But I think yes, they're just like
banking
Jimmy
on that.
Fallon.
Yeah.
They're trying to create viral videos,
Right.
Because
Right. 'Cause
nowadays that's what sells.
Because no one's watching the shows; they're watching it on Reels.
They're
And
becoming
TikToks.
viral video machines,
Right.
TikToks and
Reels.
Instagram Reels.
Yeah.
That's what they want to create.
Now the interesting thing is, and it's funny that you should bring up the one beat thing, because if you really go back to, I would say specifically that year, and obviously my favorite era was when a lot of the Phil stuff was going on. It was really about people who were so versatile, and
Right.
They could play a lot of different
Exactly.
characters. And one of the worst things that ever happened to Phil was it was a Saturday morning. He had been off the show for a year. The ratings were in the toilet. He gets an unexpected call from a guy from TV Guide, and he says, I just want your opinion about what's going on with the show. And he's half asleep, and he said, well, I think the difference now is that myself and Dana and Jan Hooks, there were a lot of layers to what we did. We did impressions, we did characters, but now you're dealing with Chris Farley, who's the fat guy who falls down, and Adam Sandler, who's the guy. And just saying, they were kind of one beat characters. Well, the way that came across in the article, which was intentionally written to make it look like Phil was saying
Of
they're not as
course.
talented as we are, which is not what he was trying to
course.
say.
Right.
But I think that's more how comedy has evolved. Not in every case. Now, I think Kate McKinnon is a brilliant performer. And
Yeah.
she has a lot of layers to what she did off
Yep.
the show now, of course.
Yeah.
But I think to what Dan said, there are a lot of people who can just do one thing really
Or
well.
is it that they do it really well, or is it that the writers latch onto it and say, well, we're going to write one of these every
No,
week?
I think it's the former.
Really?
I think they're brought on because
they do that one thing.
extremely well in the
Yeah.
hopes that if that goes viral, look, then we have a platform for the other things you do.
Right.
But the intent is to
Bring them on
capitalize
because they
that
do that one
great
thing. Yeah.
I feel like that's what's happening.
Yeah, and you're
kinda
right, because back then it wasn't like that. Like, yes, John Lovitz did, yeah, that's the ticket. And then he also did acting, genius,
Right.
thank you.
I'd be Satan.
There was so
Yeah.
many
Yes.
different things, yeah.
The
And
format has been flipped upside down because, as we all know, it used to be, okay, we're waiting for Saturday to see the take of the week. Okay, like what's the thing that's we're all going to be talking about now by Saturday because of this? All the jokes, every comedian's out there.
They've already
there are
done
lots
it.
of funny people around, so
Yep.
it still has value. So it's like, how do you find a
You're
way?
right.
And they're doing fine. I mean, obviously they're still making money,
Right.
But the format is so entrenched and it's so ensconced. It's a part of culture, so it's an institution.
Yep.
How do you transition that out of what it was and still make it viable?
It's almost like Saturday Night Live is like a newspaper. And what happened to newspapers when all of a sudden everything went online? So perfect thing that you bring that up, because a couple of weeks ago, Cosby announced that he wanted to go on tour. Do you know how many fucking jokes about what's your drinks at the show I saw?
2 drink
It's-
minimum.
What does the VIP package include?
Right,
It's all there already.
exactly. So by the time SNL, if they wanted to make a joke about it, 15,000 jokes have already been made online,
gotta
and
be
it's
so
and it's
talented.
not that it's I'm not saying all the people that made those jokes were hacky. It's just that's what you think of all of a sudden, and
not
it's
just
immediate.
comics that are doing it.
Of course,
That's
right.
the social media curse now.
And
right?
right.
Everybody's a comic.
Everyone's a comic.
The
Yeah,
really difficult thing that they run into now, and back when I was coming up and I was just blindly sending submissions to shows, and they would always be returned unopened because they were afraid if they read something and then somebody did something similar, you would sue them.
Right.
Now, I would say every 3 weeks you hear a story about that sketch that was on last week. There's a YouTuber
I came up
who's
with
been
that
doing
already.
that. Blah, blah, blah.
Right,
There's-
right.
The world has opened up so
it's
much.
opened up.
There was a whole like thing with Conan. Dude, there was a whole like trial it almost went to where he actually someone said, "Oh, I tweeted the same joke." And Conan wrote an amazing because he's so brilliant. Like
Right.
response, I
Yep,
forgot
yep.
where he wrote it, but it really kind of
Talked about parallel thinking
typifies what that is. Yeah,
Right,
and it's
right.
so to us, we love this stuff. It's what we so interesting.
So the show is almost more difficult to do now. I will say that.
That's
Yeah.
true.
But one thing that does surprise me in terms of what you were saying about the Steve Martin and Martin Short episode is we live in an era where attention spans are so short. But
Right.
then you see that Scrooge thing that they did, which
Yes.
was a one-beat joke over and over and over and over again that just seemed to go, and it was funny at first.
Yes.
But then after a while, it's like,
Enough.
is this going to extend to a second episode next
Right.
week? Like,
Yes.
wrap it up. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, the first when they hit it the first time, I laughed. They hit it a second time, I'm like, all right, I get where they're going with this. But then, like the third time, the fourth time, I was like, oh,
Now
my
you're starting to
God.
predict it. And
You
It's
know
like,
what's
move
interesting?
on
The
already.
point you just made just hit me because now it's almost like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we can't blame writers and the cast. Maybe it's that SNL was always topical. They would come in on what, Tuesday or Monday?
Monday
morning,
at
they would come in.
Monday at 5 o'clock, everyone's in Lauren's office. They bring the host in, and the writers pitch sketch.
Pitch some sketch ideas because they knew who the host was going to be. Right.
Tuesday is writing all night. They
Yep.
say, okay, this one's good, that one's good, this one isn't. So
Right.
they all pull an all-nighter, and they write. And
Right.
then Wednesday, things really start to roll.
Wednesday, it starts really going. So if you think about it, that you could stay topical because if something happened in the news Monday or Tuesday, Saturday isn't that far away.
Yeah.
You're going to be the first one to make a joke about it.
Right.
But now, because of social media, it's already been done. You're no longer topical.
So wouldn't
but
you
you
think,
know-
though, wouldn't you think that they would shy away more from topical political?
I was just going to
Right.
say
Too
that.
silly because
and
silly
that's the thing.
because it doesn't have a shelf life.
So exactly, because think about it. Like I loved, one of the sketches from a couple of years ago was Kylo Ren on Undercover Boss.
Oh yeah,
Which was hilarious.
Which was hilarious. So yes, you're capitalizing on the new Star Wars movie.
Right.
But people haven't made a million jokes about it by that week. So
Right.
it makes sense. Hey, let's marry up that show Undercover Boss with Kylo Ren. It's fucking genius.
It is
That was a great episode. So maybe they should be looking at less political, less
And by the
topical.
way, with that sketch, it's
Yeah.
formulaic.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it doesn't,
Yeah.
we're
It follows a
professional
formula.
writers. Like,
Right.
we have a formula now. We know it works.
Right.
Pick one from column A, one from column B, and write
Put it
Yeah.
together. Right.
And one that I saw in rewatching the '84 season, and I thought to myself, they just don't do stuff like this anymore. It was a game show called 7x4.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they're all
yes.
yelling out the
And they
yard.
kept yelling, 11, 11, 11, 11. I did stop it. I haven't asked the question yet.
7 times 24, not 7 plus 20.
Yeah.
No, I can only add.
I know. I was going to say 11. That makes it actually funnier. Where the hell were you that year?
But it was a one
didn't
beat
have to
joke
point that out.
that didn't go on for 7 minutes. It
Right,
was just
right.
this quick in and out thing. And very,
Well, and they ended it by the guy
Well-
going, great, we're out of time.
But even a recent sketch when they said, what was it, Diner Lobster? It was a Pete Davidson skit from a couple of years ago.
Well,
where they
and
were
you know
like,
who came up
how
with that
ridi-
idea?
Mulaney.
John Mulaney.
John Mulaney, right.
And when he was a writer on that show, he never got it on.
Right.
And
so
every
when he
time
guest
hosts,
starred. Right.
The things that he didn't get, he would write these elaborate musicals.
Right.
And now every time it comes on, they bring
but
him
very
up.
similar to Larry
Funny.
David. Some
Right.
great ideas that doesn't fit
Yeah.
here. You hang on to.
And isn't it
There's
amazing?
a lot of guys. Bob Odenkirk.
Oh,
Yes,
right.
the guy who
Yeah.
was
Right.
jettisoned and had nothing ever on. And
Brilliant.
Now he's
Brilliant guy.
brilliant writer.
No, but we're talking about the newer seasons and topical humor.
Right.
When you go back to that season 10, the Ed Grimley stuff, the Fernando interviews, none of that was overly topical.
no, that's the thing.
Fun.
It wasn't.
Willie and Frankie, talking about piercing their nipples with knitting needles and stuff.
Oh, as if I could
It was
actually
a
meet
reference.
Mr.
It
Pat
was a reference.
Sajak.
Like what if we became best friends?
Best
don't you
friends,
know?
oh.
None of that was topical. It was just funny.
Yeah.
And
Now
I
the
think
only
that's what
charac-
made that season great, and why we still talk about it now, and why we still find it funny now is because it wasn't topical.
Because they're not coming up with original characters. The characters are the politicians or the people in the news.
Right.
Because they're trying to move the needle
'Cause
in line.
it's- exactly.
It's like, how do
Right.
you win both races?
You can't.
And the thing is now, I don't know if you guys are the same way now. Obviously, I know a lot about the show, and I watch it every week and I'm OCD, so I feel like I have to see
Plus,
it
what
'cause-
else are you doing right now?
Right.
Yeah, right.
So I always feel like, I'm afraid I'm going to miss it, as if in this day you can miss anything.
Right.
But now, I remember back then in the 80s, just looking forward to it all day. Like,
Yes.
I couldn't
Yes.
wait.
Yes. Absolutely.
And now it's a homework assignment. Like, I
Yeah.
just feel like I'm watching it out of obligation.
Did we not all talk about it on Monday in high school?
Yes.
What
Oh my God! Did you
happened on
see this
Saturday?
sketch? Yeah.
We used to get together at a friend's house on Saturday nights and watch it all together.
watch
a
it,
bunch
right.
of us.
I would
Stay
wrap
up
up
and just
hanging out
watch
with
it.
friends so I could go home and watch it.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to pay attention. I want to deal with friends talking during it.
So I think here's what the conclusion I've come to tonight
Ace's final thought.
is the five of us should start our own show and call it Fridays and put it on Friday nights.
There was a show called Fridays that actually had Larry David.
I
on
am.
it.
That's
And Michael Richards.
Okay.
Michael Richards, yeah.
Here's something called sarcasm.
Okay.
I don't know if you know
know
this,
what?
Mr. Writer. but
After 7 times 4 is 11 with you two, I just never fucking know.
Don't lump me in with him. I fucking know Fridays. Are you kidding?
Listen, I can't count to 21 unless I'm naked.
As a former pharmacy tech, how awesome was Mark Blankfield as the pharmacist
there
who
you go.
took all the pills? Take another pill.
All right.
I loved it. That was
I'm
the
gonna
first
go back to
time.
my iPad.
The first time I ever saw Michael Richards was him playing the kid in the backyard on the mound, playing with the toy soldiers, lighting them on fire and shit. That was I loved. For a while, I liked Fridays better than I liked Saturday Night Live, and I don't know how
was
it
Fridays
went out.
before this particular season.
It was
or-
before the
early
season.
80s.
Yeah, it was.
okay.
It was probably trying to go up against the Eddie Murphy season.
Yeah. Larry David did some commentary.
Larry David was on that.
On it.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
It was great.
Now,
And I think
one of
that's
the
how we
things-
met Julia Louis-Dreyfus was on
Exactly.
Fridays,
One of the interesting
Melanie
things
Chardoff.
about the 1984 season, too, is once it came to a close unexpectedly when it did,
Yeah.
they were trying to figure out what they were going to do the next season, and they tried to bring everybody back. And Short was a hard no, Guest was a hard no. They were just like, no, it was too much fucking work.
To your point earlier, they were like, "Yeah, it was the most miserable time of my life that 1 year."
But the one person who was going to come back was Billy Crystal,
really,
and
and he was the biggest name.
they were trying to figure out what they were going to do, and NBC was just kind of looking at it, and they thought it looked like such a clusterfuck. They canceled SNL until one executive said, "What if we can bring Lorne Michaels back?" And that's what saved Saturday
That's
Night
how
Live.
Lorne came back.
This is documented in the book heavily. Like,
Right.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
so he came on and assembled a cast that was pretty fucking horrible. I mean, that was the Anthony Michael Hall, Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey
Yeah.
Jr.
That was the Terry
Okay,
Sweeney cast.
Terry Sweeney.
But then again, Lovitz was there, Dennis Miller was there, so there were some
Yeah.
seeds of what could be coming.
What it could
Yeah,
become.
babe. I loved it.
But
Yeah,
they-
babe.
As we sailed up the Euphrates River, babe.
What do you say there, Baba Ganoush? Huh? And then Dana Carvey doing Dennis Miller on the news.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite
Didn't
things.
they do a Dennis Miller convention?
Oh my god!
Right? That was
Yeah.
hilarious.
Which is probably where they got the idea for the Christopher Walken
I'm
family
sure.
reunion.
I'm sure.
Even to this day, when Dana Carvey breaks out into the Dennis Miller impression, it's still one of the things that makes me laugh the hardest.
And that's as an impressionist. Sometimes I
God.
don't do an impression of the
You do the
person.
impression.
I do an
Carvey
impression of an
of the
impression.
impression.
Of the
Yes.
impression.
Yeah,
If I do Dennis Miller, it's Dana Carvey doing Dennis
it.
Miller. If I do Claiborne Pell, who's been passed away for how many years, it's not my Claiborne Pell.
How much of a
It's-
demand for
it's-
your Pell?
No, no. But when I do it, it's
All
it's
the time.
Al Matthews from Paul and Al doing Claiborne Pell.
That's great.
You know.
That's crazier than Boo Radley at a Golden Corral. Shack.
Yeah. Whatever you say there, Baba Ganoush. Yeah, sure.
The three most esoteric references. You just cram them into one sentence.
Yeah, right. That's what. That's what
like
Dennis Miller.
Socrates in present day using Bumbles. I don't know. I don't know. Right? It's so brilliant. Like,
Well, you could do Monday Night Football.
Yeah, right.
That
Exactly.
Right.
One of my favorite jokes that he did, like one of the, and again, I loved it. I thought he
Oh,
was
yeah.
great at that. We would like that. One of the players had some routine surgery in the groin. He's like, "Let me tell you something. If anyone's using a sharp object near my groin, there's nothing routine about it." Like, I don't. Yeah, right. I thought it was hysterical.
Yeah.
He had his
You have to do
moments.
the head shake.
Yeah, you got to do the head
Yeah,
shake,
so much
and you
fun.
got to smirk too.
Yeah,
God.
because that's what Dana Carvey does. When
Oh,
he
yeah,
does it.
it's like,
I'm laughing just thinking about it. I want to go retract that down.
And that's why when you do Norm Macdonald,
Yeah,
you
you
just
know,
gotta be you gotta be really aloof there. You know what I'm talking about?
And a lot of
You
just
gotta
like
say, yeah.
vocalized pauses. Hey, there's a guy.
There's a guy, you know?
You remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
It
I
just-
saw Norm tell some street jokes that I'm like, I used to tell that street joke to friends, and he does it in a 15-minute thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That one joke about the moth that he told on Letterman or Conan. 15-minute joke, and he's like, yeah. And he finally gets to the punchline, and I'm like, my God, that was so long, but why have I been laughing the whole time?
just had that.
Because it's Norm.
Wasn't
Yeah,
it
it's
one
his
of you who
voice.
told me that Conan actually said to him?
So I read
we
that.
had-
I guess that he wasn't supposed to do two panels that night.
Right.
He was doing so. Norm's always great, and he with Conan he was always terrific.
Yes.
I always loved him with Letterman too. That they always great.
But
pairings.
Conan
Something-
really appreciated Norm.
Yeah.
I mean, Letterman appreciated him, but Conan
Right.
loved Norm.
And
You
apparently
could
they was
tell.
only supposed to do one panel, and during the break, Conan's like, "We're going to do a second. Can you come back?" He's like, I didn't have anything."
I got nothing prepared. I
and he
don't know
just-
what you're talking about.
Like had that he just
Yeah.
rattled
Was it on
off.
Letterman or Conan that he did his Germany joke about World War?
I think that's the last Letterman.
It is the last.
that was the last Letterman. Yeah,
They
yeah.
decided we're
You
going to
know,
go to
took
war.
on the world.
The
Yeah,
world.
yeah,
It's
we're
closer than
Germany.
you
yeah.
think.
We're gonna take on the world.
Howard Stern was just talking about that the other
Yeah.
day.
Oh,
is that right?
It was.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
that's an awesome one.
Oh, so
I-
funny.
We could do a whole one of these on Norm.
No, absolutely.
I just saw a clip of that
fucking
earlier
break into
today,
Norm
too.
all day.
Oh my god,
It's
so
your guy,
brilliant.
the world.
Yeah, the world.
Yeah, and I got a great idea. How about we go to war with the world?
And then he's like you said, it was a lot closer than you.
You would think it'd be
you would
over.
think-
It'd be over in like 15 minutes.
You see what? And then he would have this like very nondescript. You see what they did was, the hand exactly.
and the weird thing about Norm is too, you speak about that last appearance when he got emotional.
Yeah.
And started
And-
tearing up. Yeah, yeah.
We're all sitting there like, is this a bit? Like how
Right.
is he gonna?
No.
Right, you're like, holy shit, this isn't.
No,
a
it
bit.
was-
This
it was
is,
true.
Like,
Yeah, it was
Mad
not
respect.
dice on Arsenio. It was legitimate.
There's a callback.
That's a great reference. That's a great reference. Well, I don't know. I could talk about.
I know.
It's great.
Saturday Night Live for forever. There's so many great seasons.
I know. As much as we tried to nail it down to one season,
We ended up jumping around.
It's all right.
all around. But you have
Pretty
to
well. Yeah,
because
it's the history of the show.
because
There's
you
so
want to
ma- there's
compare
so many
that
comparisons.
season.
So the
Yep.
seasons.
Exactly.
You know,
And everyone has that one year that, like, when you were first discovering comedy,
Yeah.
like they hold it in
Yeah.
such high regard, and you will always look back fondly of it, and it will hold a special
Well,
place for you.
and depending on where you were at in your life.
Your
Like
life.
I remember going and sleeping over my buddy's house, and we would watch the first year.
Yeah.
The not ready for primetime plays. Then it was
I was like 6, so
then
I didn't
we
get
were
to watch it.
all right. Then we would you camp out in your backyard in a tent, but of course back in the 80s you ran an extension cord and you played Atari and you fucking watched Saturday Night Live after everyone was in bed, and that was the Eddie Murphy, Joe Piscopo years.
Yeah.
Right. But then I remember being in college and it was all about the Phil Hartman, the John Lovitz,
Yes.
the Jen Hooks. That was just an amazing season. Victoria Jackson
Yeah.
doing splits on
Great
the news
cast.
desk.
Great cast.
That was another great cast. So it's different
and
parts
that's what
of
that
your
show's
life.
always been is they would have great casts.
Yep.
You might have an off year or
It's-
two, and then it would come back, and then
It's like
off year or two, and
it's like songs.
Yeah.
When you think
Puts you
about
right
it,
back where you
certain
were.
songs bring you back to that time in your life, and certain because let's face it, we're all around 40s or 50s. It's been on for 50
or
years.
30s.
Yeah, okay, bullshit. It's been on for that long that now it's like a song. Like when I think back to the Phil Hartman years, I think back to college when
Yeah,
and
gives you
first
sense
started
memories.
comedy.
When he hears Benny Goodman, he thinks of his prom.
Dude, I'm literally 6 months older than you douche.
Here it comes.
That's right, gal. Want to step out on the
here it
dance
goes.
floor?
Well, who'd you take? Busby Berkeley?
Poor Carl. Yeah. We did a dance sequence in
That's
the pool.
right.
We did Ziegfeld's. Yeah, Busby Berkeley was the pool guy, right?
I picked up this dame in my Edsel, and we went to the
There he
prom.
goes. Carla's not even here and he's doing it.
And she's still catching shit.
Oh my God! Well, she did say I got all gussied up, and that
this
just
is true.
fucking
That was
set
the
him
end.
off.
Yeah.
You say gussied up, and this asshole's gonna go. How about a lucky strike?
That's right. Light up a lucky strike. Climb in my Edsel, and we'll go cruising the town.
All right, I think it's time to.
That's right, dame. You got some set of stems.
But to speak to the ups and the downs, and
Yeah.
to speak to the 84 season, I think a good way to look at it is this. Usually when SNL is in a down period, you're like, who's going to be the Eddie Murphy that's going to
Right.
rescue?
Right.
Who's going to be the Will Ferrell? But when you look at 84 and then you look at the Hartman, Lovitz, Carvey, Hooks cast, it wasn't about one person.
Right.
It was about the company.
The ensemble.
The
Yeah.
ensemble that made
To my
those
point
years
about
so
them being friends.
special. Yeah,
Right.
Trying to further some
That's
social
right.
media platform
That's
or
right.
something
Right.
like that.
They're
Right.
having fun
Yeah.
with each other.
But I wonder if that's also the atmosphere that's been played, because I've never heard people like Dana Carvey, not Dana Carvey, like Jan Hooks, John Lovitz. I never heard them talking about how competitive it was to
it
get
was
your sketch
competitive.
on. Really,
What the best
yeah.
book,
but they
though-
never talk about it. But you do hear Jim Brewer and
Yeah.
Adam Sandler and all of those guys talk about
The
it.
best
you know?
book is the Jay Moore book.
Yes.
About his 2 years on
Yes.
SNL. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh,
read
it's
that yet.
fantastic. I mean, it was the middle 90s when he was there, but
Yep.
it's still applicable to anyone.
And it was
who's
one of
ever-
those downturns,
Right. And
right?
he but talking about the angst and the frustration and feeling marginalized and not really a part of it and trying so hard and just but
Yeah.
having good ideas. It's fantastic.
And I've heard a million interviews with
great
Brewer
book.
talking
Great book.
about that. You know,
yeah.
Well, one of my earliest memories of what it was like there and how the sausage was really made was when Phil one
That's
day
a totally different channel, by the way, Brian.
yeah, that's
Not on
Skinamax.
NBC.
Comes on at midnight.
Phil one day said to me, "I worry about you because you're like me. You want your material to stand on its own. You're not a brown noser. You're not a backstabber, but." That's what this whole experience is. And I'm just like, this is Saturday Night Live. How is everyone not walking in every day and kissing the ground and thanking?
Right, because how many of us would fucking kill to
Right.
be
But
on that
he said
show?
I'm not that either, and that's why I never had my church lady or whatever. And Dan's gonna love this story. So, and I've told it on here before, but it's worth telling again.
Yeah.
So Phil would bring things to the table read, and they would absolutely kill. And so he would think, oh, thank God, I'm going to get this thing on Saturday. And then no sooner would the table read be over than fucking Rob Schneider would walk into Lorne's office and say, did you really think that Hartman thing was funny? I mean, I don't know. To me, it just seemed kind of jokey. And so time after time, Phil's stuff kept getting yanked. And then he found out what was going on and who was behind it. And I love this story.
Sneaky Rob Schneider.
So
It was Sneaky Rob.
he's walking down.
Making copies and accusations.
So one
You like
day,
that?
Nicely done.
Phil's walking down the hall, and Phil's like this West Coast hippie, really just nice guy.
Yeah, just
non-confrontational.
laid back, right?
And he's walking this way, and here comes Schneider, and Schneider goes, "Hey, Phil," and he said, "I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed him by the shirt and I pinned him up against the wall." And he said, and suddenly the headline flashed across my view screen: 200-pound comedian kills dwarf. So I just dropped him.
So he
I let
dropped him and let him go?
And then he ran away, and he never fucked with me again.
Wow.
And I actually heard Schneider not telling that full story,
But something
admitting
similar?
that he was an asshole to Phil, and that now he really regrets
Regrets it. Yeah.
Guess what,
Retrospect.
Rob? You're still an asshole.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
on that note-
Hey, that's what we need our intern to do. We need to take that clip and fucking make it go viral, and then we'll
Yeah.
grow.
And anyone named
I'll get right on that.
Of course, if Rob Schneider was still relevant, then it would mean more. But
anyone named Rob you have on,
yeah.
you can use the.
yeah, right.
There you go.
But I want to say
Our
this too.
very good friend Dr. J Sute,
Yes.
rest
Ah,
in peace,
Dr. J.
Yeah, love Dr. J.
who opened up for Rob. Rob treated him like a piece of shit the whole weekend he worked with him. So fuck Rob Schneider.
And here's a guy who was
One of the nicest people.
one
on
of the nicest
planet.
guys.
Oh, yeah.
Pediatrician, awesome guy, hilarious comic.
You couldn't not get along with him.
I loved
You
him.
would have to work hard to not get along with Jay, and you would still get along with him.
Let's put it this way: when Jay was near the end, he had a
Tumor on his
tumor
brain.
tumor on his brain. We went out. They had this big parade for him
'Cause it was
in
during
the town.
COVID.
It was during COVID, so they couldn't have a bunch of visitors. So they had a fucking parade
Wow.
in his town, going by his doctor's office. We drove out. Now, I picked Scott up. Scott's like a half hour from here. It was still another hour and a half out. We saw Marty Caproni out there, And we drove by, we waved, we were like, oh my God, there's a million people coming by here. I mean,
The line was close to 5 miles long that went by his office.
that went by his office easily.
That's
Patients,
we get-
friends.
Yeah.
we
that's good to hear.
we get 20 minutes away, and he gets a call from Jay's daughter, and she said, hey, my dad wanted to know where his friends Ace and Scott went. Wow. And she was like, everyone has already gone by, but he'd really like to see you guys. And I was like, we're turning this fucking car around. And we drove back and saw him, and he was, and I've said it before, I don't know if he was beamed out because of the tumor or because of the pot that he was smoking. And you know what? Fuck it. I mean, he smoked pot
yeah.
before he had the tumor, but fuck it. If I'm dying, I'm smoking pot every fucking minute of the day too. But he and his daughter called after and told him how much it meant that we went back. That's the
great.
kind of person that Jay was. So to hear that anyone treated him like shit,
Yep.
fuck you, Rob Schneider.
Leave it up to him, man.
That's crazy.
So I'll tell
and
you
I've
the
never
story
even met him.
after the show.
All right. Now you sound like Skip Daniels. After the show.
After this shit.
I can't
Yeah.
understand why.
Yeah, no. We get it. No, listen, guys, we really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about this. It's always a fun hang.
One of our favorite subjects, and to
Yeah.
have three guys that we like so much and that we respect.
And
I wish
who
I could
actually
say. I
wrote.
wish I could say the feeling was mutual, but
Yes, we know.
No, but we love your opinions. We love hanging out with you guys, so we appreciate you guys coming on and
Great topic.
Brian
hanging
wants
out
to
with
say
us.
something.
I think the one thing to really wrap up this
We've
whole
had enough of you today.
I know.
Seriously.
Can you tell he misses
really-
being on
I haven't
air?
been on the air in for 3 months.
Uncaged. Somebody please give Brian a job for Christ's sakes.
He's going to be fucking back next week.
Oh my God. He'll be vacuuming the goddamn studio
Give me
again.
the turn opening.
I'm the
Yeah.
guy. I'm the guy who's criticizing that Scrooge thing that Short and Martin did, and my thing is dragging on for fucking ever. But I really think the thing about the 1984 season that makes it really special is when you look at SNL, and we talked about the ups and downs, and it's been around for nearly 50 years, and you just think about Lorne Michaels, what a fucking genius in terms of the talent that he has discovered.
Oh, my
and the
God,
people have
yeah.
gone on to do these great things.
Yeah.
But one of the best seasons ever of that show
Was not
Lorne
with
had
him.
nothing to do
Yeah.
with it.
Yes.
But it was,
True.
and so kudos to Dick Ebersol for pulling
Yeah.
that together and having the foresight to think, all right, continuing to have unknowns isn't working. Let's try something different.
He
and
revived it.
Exactly.
An all-star team.
You had to give it a shot of steroids.
I mean, that show
basically, to
would
get
not
it
be on.
up and running.
We wouldn't have gotten all of these great seasons after if it wasn't for that. Because let's face it, if it wasn't for that little blip where, all right, the season before was okay, then that was a great season, and then it died again, and then they begged Lauren to come back. So kudos to both of them, because, I mean, Lauren could have just fucking moved on and done whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing to think that all of that, like all of what we have now, might never have happened if it wasn't for that one season.
Right.
And only 17 episodes.
17 episodes,
That's
right?
insane.
Because what's a standard year? Is it
22.
20? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Interesting.
All right, now I'm done.
Are you
I want to
sure?
hear
Ryan is
Dan's
finished.
Rob Schneider.
Yeah, so we got to
let's
get
wrap
going
this
now.
up.
So
yeah.
we appreciate it so much, you guys tuning in every week like you
Yeah.
do. Hope you enjoyed this little walk down memory lane to one of our by far favorite seasons. It was definitely a season that influenced me early on when I was really getting hardcore into comedy at that time. So I loved the characters. I loved that season. So hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did.
And I absolutely, just because we started talking about it and I was such a fan of the show, I would love to have you guys back to do a panel show on Fridays, because I could probably name more characters from Fridays than I could from this season of SNL.
And that's a little known show. I don't think people remember that show as much.
You can barely, I don't know
But-
who owns the rights to it, but it's not streaming
Yeah.
on anything. You can barely find any of the skits on YouTube.
Yeah,
Whoever
exactly.
owns Fridays has it locked up and will not share it. And it is one of the funniest shows. And I don't know why it didn't last. I'd love to dig into why it went off the air, because, again, it wasn't competing directly with Saturday Night Live. It was the night before. Yes, it was a different network, but it was hilarious. And it was, I'd say, a little more edgy than Saturday Night Live.
It was
very much
what
so.
ended up being Dana Carvey's ABC primetime sketch show, which there is a great Hulu special.
That
Yes.
documentary is
Excellent.
awesome.
Yeah.
Is with
Excellent.
that unbelievably talented cast with Carell and Colbert and,
Yeah.
and the writers like Smigel and everything else, and how that thing
How it
just
didn't take
flamed
off.
out.
Right.
And they blame the first sketch that they did. If anyone has never seen that,
Yeah.
it's, it is
It's
up
a
there.
documentary.
great documentary.
Great. Yeah.
So maybe we'll talk about both.
Yeah.
We got
And then
lots to talk about.
I came across a documentary recently. You know, we've talked about when stand-up stood out.
Oh yeah.
And that's all about the Boston comedy scene and how it started. And this past week, someone shared a little YouTube video. It's like a 40-minute video, and it's called Going Up.
Oh, yeah.
And
I've
it's
seen it.
all about how the Rhode Island comedy scene got started.
Yeah.
And I would love to have like some of you guys on. I'd love to get Charlie and Frank on and talk about that, because they're obviously prominently in
Yeah,
it.
'cause it-
but it talks about the beginning of Periwinkles, how it started,
And
how
especially
comedy
the open
scene
mic
started.
night.
The open mic night. And it was filmed in '87, so it was 2 years before I started. But literally,
thank God.
standing there watching, you know, Tom Cotter and you asshole, Tom Cotter and
It's on
Charlie.
me for making fun of him because he thinks 7 times 4 is 11. And then
Right,
he just
but he
buries
just
Ace
shits
right
on
there.
me,
That's
right.
what I love about this.
but
anyway.
watching
Cheers.
the bar at Periwinkles where Tom Cotter, Rockin' Joe, like Frank, Charlie, Brian Freites, all these people, Eddie Galvin.
Yes.
Eddie Galvin does a joke. If you thought Eddie Galvin was inappropriate in 2022 or 23, you need to see the joke that he did back in 1987 that you would actually shit your pants going, thank God. We've all thought that Eddie maybe, you know, hasn't moved forward because he hasn't evolved. This proved that he has evolved, because I've never seen this joke before, and thank God. And I'll tell you after the show,
Oh, we got a lot
because
to
it
talk
has
about. We gotta
it,
wrap this
it
up.
has to do with, as you said before we started, your people.
All right, then.
Let's get to it.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk a little
Before
bit
Ace
about that.
slips and tells it.
No, I'm not going to tell it. No, I would never tell this joke.
No, listen, we really appreciate you guys listening as usual. Please tell a friend about us. 5-star written review. We've got a fair amount of written reviews. I've actually looked it up, and we got some good reviews. So we appreciate
for our
it.
new subscribers, thank you so much. Hope you guys are enjoying everything you're hearing, especially the back catalog. We got a bunch of great stuff there, and Ace is lining up some great new episodes coming up in the future. So
I am.
We appreciate it.
I got to get to work.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank
for
you
having
so
us.
much. And other than that, we will talk to you
next week.